Grizzlies get a pair of secondary transfers from Oregon State. The Packers are on the road at San Francisco for the NFC Championship game. We talked to Doug Russell, a radio host in Milwaukee, about that, and the chick who doesn't know sports makes her triumphant return. It is Tootell, Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Hello out there. Hope you are having a wonderful day. A happy Friday to you. Thanks for being with us, letting us be on board with you on this very fine Friday evening/afternoon. Let's take a look at what we got in the show today. We are going to go through a couple of things, Coulter. First of all, neither of the Montana schools played any basketball yesterday. We will talk about their matchups tomorrow with Idaho and Eastern Washington, respectively. Take a look at what's gone on in the Big Sky Conference since the last time these two teams were in action. We also will get into a little bit of transfer news, which is pretty interesting for the Grizzlies, as they get two transfers from Oregon State, both from the same team and both play in the same position. They played at safety at Oregon State, but will play, or at least compete to play, at cornerback at the University of Montana. It is Omar Hicks-Anu and Trajan Cotton are the two young men that are transferring into the University of Montana. So we'll get into that a little bit. We will have, as I mentioned, the chick who doesn't know sports, and also at the top of the hour, Doug Russell. He hosts the evening show on ESPN Radio in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He also is the anchor of the opening drive, which is the Green Bay Packers pregame show. So we will have him on the show here at the top of the hour as well, and get you set for the NFC Championship game, maybe even the AFC Championship game we'll get into as well. So there you go. That is our show outlook today. If you'd like to call, 329-1899 is the phone number. All guests join us via the Raggage Brothers RV phone line. If you would like to listen live, you can do that as well on the web, 1029ESPN.com. You listen live on the Listen Live tab, as always, and it is available thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. Coulter, let's talk about a little bit of Grizz football here to start, with a couple of transfers coming into the University of Montana from Oregon State. Now, this has been sort of on the radar for a little while, but official today. Omar Hicks-Anu, he's a 6'1", 192-pound senior. He's a grad transfer, so he's got 1 year of eligibility. Is originally from Carrollton, Texas. He played...
I think it's Carrollton.
Oh, Carrollton? Okay. Yeah. Played in 6 games and made 3 starts in 2019, which is his 5th season in Corvallis. He redshirted. He played 24 straight games as a redshirt, and then in 2016 and 2017 missed the 2018 season due to injury. Came back, finished out what then became his junior season last year after a medical hardship, but then graduated, and now is grad transferring for his final year of eligibility to the University of Montana. Traded on Cotton. He's a younger kid. He played for, this is his redshirt junior season that he's coming into. He redshirted his true freshman year and then saw action in a couple games in 2018, and then missed last year because of injury, but has not received a medical redshirt for that injury, so it looks like he's got 2 years of eligibility remaining. But he's from Inderkum High School in Sacramento, California, and was an outstanding two-way player there. Had 20 touchdowns, 1,900 all-purpose yards. But
as a quarterback, so he knows offensive football a little bit.
But defensively, 63 tackles, 5 picks. He was the number 3 safety in California as rated by Scout. Also the number 7 safety in the West. So, very good player, a highly recruited player. Ended up going to Oregon State, and now with 2 years of eligibility left. Now, I don't know what the injury was that either of these kids had, but especially coming off it from last season for Trajan Cotton, I don't know what his what that injury was and what the significance of it, if there was any sort of surgery associated with it or what have you. But obviously a very highly recruited kid, and in a position, especially because the word is that they're going to work these kids out at cornerback, how much they're, at a position that the Grizzlies certainly need help, and you can always use as many guys in that secondary, especially at corner, as you can find.
My initial reaction to this was it's a little bit too bad that the Grizz couldn't get these guys for this season. Obviously, they weren't available at the time. There was a potential grad transfer from Arizona State last summer that the Grizz were in the market for, and almost got him. He had the inside track, but I don't want to take this off the rails yet, but there's a situation going on with grad transfers at the University of Montana. It seems as if the Hicks Onu kid is good to go because Montana put out a press release and he is grad transfer, so I assume that means he's in. But there's been a couple different cases. The Arizona State corner transfer they almost got last summer, and then the kid from BYU, the Hartnett kid who almost came here to play point guard for the Grizz. Neither one of them could get into grad school, which I think that's crazy when you have floundering enrollment like Montana does, and if the guy's got a degree, I don't know. Regardless, that's not what this is about, though. This is about they fortified a position of need, certainly. But the second thought I had about this was that Oregon State's doing sort of a wholesale cleaning house. These guys came to play for Gary Anderson, and these two transfers combined with Jeffrey Manning, who's a safety who just visited Montana State last week, that's 3 guys from the Oregon State secondary alone that are on the market at least, and Manning might end up going to Bozeman as well. His Twitter was showing him wearing the Bobcat jersey and saying he loved his visit, and so we'll see how that pans out. But there's a little bit of an exodus from the Oregon State secondary. And a lot of times with the new coaching staff, it's not necessarily maybe that these guys are leaving as much as maybe they're even getting forced out, or it could be a combination of both. Maybe they just don't, they're not meshing with the new coaching staff. It's just a new coaching staff in place. So, but this definitely helps Montana, certainly, because they need corners. I thought that the narrative coming into Bobby Hauck's first season was we have 3 flaws: offensive line, defensive secondary, and depth at linebacker. Montana has fortified its depth at linebacker, certainly, especially with the emergence of younger guys like Jace Lewis and Marcus Wellnell. Montana revamped their safety position more quickly than I even thought possible. They went from having no safeties to a bunch of safeties. They brought in Gavin Robertson from Arizona, Robbie Hauck from Northern Arizona, Reed Miller from Arkansas, and then they also had a bunch of young guys like Nash Bouch, who then this next year had a great standout year, but then also some of the local guys like David Kopang, Jackson Pepe, a bunch of guys that I think have potential too. They went from no depth there to actually quite a bit of depth at safety, so that was good. The offensive line, that story's been told extensively, just how much that they've improved. I still think they have a long ways to go to become back to elite, but they were certainly better this year than they were a year ago.
No doubt.
And in the secondary, I just think that with the premier players that Montana had on defense this last year, specifically Dante Olson, that 2 shutdown corners would have just made the world of difference. And we've talked extensively about Justin Calhoun on this show. The kid deserves all the credit in the world. He's a slot receiver he started 25 straight games at corner, and he got picked on a little bit. He gave up some yards and stuff, but he was very, very, very competitive. He almost always made the tackle, even when he gave up plays, and he hardly ever got burned over the top. And so he deserves a ton of credit, but that said, it doesn't mean he can't upgrade at that position still. And so when you look at Montana's corner depth, they still do lack depth at that position. I know that the coaching staff really likes Corbin Walker, who showed flashes this year as a true freshman. He had that pick 6 against Southeastern Louisiana to cap that blowout. Darian Nash has actually done really well. Darian Nash has improved tremendously from when he first switched to corner. He's a guy that doesn't necessarily have quite elite speed as a corner, but he's got great size, and I think he's very competitive, and that's where it all starts. But just adding 2 dudes, especially because they also lose a couple guys that really weren't able to contribute. The Hemphill kid that was the San Jose State transfer who blew his knee early in the year, he didn't really get a chance to prove himself. Yeah. Lewis Cowens left the program last year, entered the transfer portal. Josh Egbo, who was supposed to be in the mix, he blew his ACL in the summer, and he graduated this last year, but he has a year of eligibility left, so I don't know where he stands. But regardless, they don't have Darren Nash is the only proven guy that they have at corner, besides with a little flash of Corbin Walker. They needed dudes, and I think that this was a good recruiting move by Montana to bring these guys in. Yeah, the thing is too is that you cornerback is probably the hardest position in the Big Sky Conference to recruit. There seems to be constantly a dearth of kids that are true corners in the sense of the word. One is it's a really hard position to play, and sort of like offensive line at a level, if you are like a straight true cornerback, you're going to
Power 5 schools, certainly to the FBS, just about across the board, because there's just not many of them, just like there's not that many actually athletic 6'4", 300-pound seniors in high school that could do it. The difference is, at offensive line, you can physically develop guys. You can put them on the 12,000 calorie a day and 10 hours in the weight room plan and get them going in that direction. To an extent, you can, but by and large, you just can't make guys faster. You certainly can't make them longer. And so it's not as developable a position physically as what the offensive line is. And that's why I think it's really hard to find. And it's especially in today's game, so critical. I mean, it's as important a position on the defensive side as there is. And so obviously, the more guys you can bring in, the better. And, anytime you see, grad transfers from Power 5, especially a kid like Omar Hicks-Anu, who's played significantly. I mean, you're talking about 24 straight games played.
Yeah, he started, 5 games in his career?
Started 5. Yeah,
started 5, but I think he played 30 total games, and he was playing in 24 games. So that means he's in the rotation.
Huge.
I mean, in the Pac-12, too, they play 3 to 4 corners all the time. And that's not uncommon for a lot of leagues, but especially in a league like the Pac-12.
Mm-hmm. So, you're talking about to think that at least he certainly has experience, okay? You put it that at the least.
You're talking about the recruiting, too, and I think that college football recruiting now, especially in the Power 5, think of it like a matrix almost that they have in terms of measurables. And the offensive line, that you want a guy that's at least 6'5", and a lot of Power 5 programs say they won't recruit a DN that's shorter than 6'3". And sometimes if you have like tremendous players, like a guy like Ed Oliver, who might not be the prototype size, but that guy might be able to. I mean, he's a 5-star recruit. I mean, his play speaks for itself. But the cornerback position, especially on the West Coast, has just gotten filtered out so much because so much of the hotbed is in California. So many of these schools are recruiting the 7-on-7 leagues and the summer camps and the Nike camp circuits and all that stuff. And you get measured, and then you get your Spark rating, and you either are or you aren't. But the thing that's happened to the Big Sky is now, if you're a 6'1" corner, you're going to get a shot. If you're a 6'1" corner who can run, you're going to get a shot. Even if you can't really play, because they think they can develop you and they just want as many bodies as they possibly can get. And so some schools, particularly like schools that have had pretty good success the last couple of years at corner, Eastern Washington, Weber State, Montana State, they've gone with short but competitive guys. I mean, Montana State's corners these last couple of years have been, they're mini. They're 5'7", 5'8", but guys like Tyrell Thomas, he's not scared of anybody. And he can make plays on the ball, but you're sacrificing the length.
Yeah.
So these guys these guys are going to look, they're going to look the part more than most guys in the league. There's not a lot of 6'1" corners in the Big Sky. Right. And so it'll be interesting to see how they fit in the mix. But the other thing is that the fact that these guys played mostly safety, but that they're bringing them in at corner. In Montana's scheme, there's all sorts of complication in the middle 9, let's call it. The guys on the outside, it's not very complicated. Get them, guard them.
Right.
You're playing man a lot.
Right.
They must see that these guys have that potential, because I really don't think they recruit them unless they did. So I think that even if they didn't have a ton of banked reps at corner, they obviously think these guys have man-to-man skills. And probably a lot of that comes from their high school tape too. But it seems like this is definitely the type of transfer you want to recruit in terms of guys that maybe just fell out of favor at the program they were at. There was a coaching change. Oftentimes you're bringing in guys that got in trouble or couldn't hack it or didn't live up to expectations. These guys both just got hurt. And there's a coaching change at the same time. That a lot of times makes the door open for you to leave. Sure. And so it seems like it's pretty solid. This just happened this afternoon, so I haven't watched that much of these guys, but I know Carrollton's a really good high school football town. That's a good high school. And Sacramento's a hotbed too, so I think these guys have probably played a lot of competitive football, and they've played in the Pac-12, so I think it's good additions for Montana.
Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Take a quick break, short opening segment. Carolyn, chick who doesn't know sports, back with a vengeance, or I don't know, at least with a new voice for us right after this. And also going to spend quite a bit of time here in this hour. Montana State, back in action. Basketball in the Big Sky Conference starting tomorrow, so we'll get into all of that right after this. Hey, Lost Trail, Powder Mountain, you looking for something to do this weekend? It's a holiday weekend, people. Martin Luther King Day on Monday. Why don't you go down to Lost Trail? 18 groomed trails now open. Conditions amazing. 58 inches of snowpack at the summit, 50 inches at the base. Total snow this season already 132 inches down. And guess what? You can get powder alerts right to your phone. Condition alerts right to your phone. You just text the word powder, apropos, I think, powder, to 31996. 31996. Just text powder to 31996. You'll get alerts and information, and guess what else you get? You will get put into a drawing to win a 5-day punch pass. Ski for free for 5 days at Lost Trail. It's for the 2019-2020 season right now. You just text powder again to 31996. You could be going on them for a full week of skiing, or, as you like it. Use it at your leisure. That's the beauty of a punch card. LostTrail.com online. You can also find them on Facebook for updates. Lost Trail Powder Mountain, the best snow you're going to find anywhere this weekend. Open all weekend, including Monday. Lost Trail. In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, ooh, pump it up.
Did you gain a little weight last year? Town Pump can help with that. They have Red Bull Energy 8.4 ounce, 3 for $5.33. And lettuce salads in the deli, only $3.99. Stop by your local Town Pump today. There's one just right down the road.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Hey there, Colter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Tootell Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
You know, Colter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have two-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started, all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
It's easy to make healthy choices with Florence Coffee's variety of organic milk alternatives for your favorite beverage. Whether you have dietary needs or you just want to try something different, Florence Coffee carries organic oat, soy, and almond milks. Enjoy that smooth Florence Coffee flavor with milk alternatives. Stop by any of our locations in Western Montana or go to florencecoffeeco.com.
Florence Coffee Company.
Hey, it's Colter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colter Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. A pair of Montana standout female athletes made news with their athletic futures on Thursday. Columbia Falls standout javelin thrower Angelica Street committed to Texas A&M for her college future. And former Bozeman High soccer star Avery Collins was drafted in the first round of the National Women's Soccer League by the Washington Spirit.
Street, who owns the Montana girls all-class record in the javelin, signed a national letter of intent with the Aggies actually last fall. Over the summer, Street went to an elite throws camp at Texas A&M and made a strong impression. She hit several javelin throws in the mid-160-foot range, which is outstanding. Near the cutoff for the U.S. Olympic trials team in fact. Street's best mark in competition came last year when she hurled the javelin 158 feet 8 inches for that state record. She has won 21 straight high school meets, including consecutive Class A state championships.
Impressive. Collins, a former Montana Gatorade Player of the Year, was a 3-year starter at Stanford, where she helped the Cardinal to 3 straight Pac-12 championships and the 2017 national title. She grad transferred to Washington State and started all 24 games last season, scoring 6 goals and doling out 5 assists. She's the daughter of former Washington Redskins defensive end Shane Collins and the brother of MSU middle linebacker Grant Collins.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
I love you in the fall. I never forget you at all. I love you in the fall. I never forget you at all.
Pretty good. Getting drafted into a professional league. Avery Collins to the National Women's Soccer League. Very good. It is Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Going to get to our dear friend Carolyn. She doesn't know about sports, doesn't know sports. That's her own self-styling. She put that moniker to her, okay, just so we're clear. In just a moment. At 102.9 ESPN on Twitter and Instagram. Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree Podcast Series, Episode 1, out right now. Just search Grizz Greats wherever you get your podcast. You go check that out anytime. And also a supplementary episode with Ben Demers and Eric Hayes, 2 guys who played for both Judd Heathcote and Jim Brandenburg, either as a head coach for Coach Brandenburg or as an assistant with Judd Heathcote in this supplementary episode. Great conversations with those 2 gentlemen. We certainly appreciate their time. That will be out later on this evening, so you can check that out. That's going to be great. Enjoy it, and we're certainly happy to do that. Coulter, before we get into some fun with Carolyn here, we got a giveaway for the people, right? Hook them up.
We do.
Get them. See, this is where I'm okay. You don't want people like participating in your own vices, but this is a vice that is actually a good one and a fun one, and this is one you're all about.
I'm loving it, man. Zootown Sports Cards down the corner of South and Higgins, they have this new thing going on called Z-Bay, where you can go in there and you can bid by hand. It's like an eBay auction, but you can bid by hand, but you can only bid once. But you can get some cards. I got that Nick Bosa card that I won in the auction recently. The other day, I just got a Tony Gwynn jersey card, which is super sweet. I'm pretty sure I just got the Ricky Henderson old school that I just bid on from down there. It's super fun, and sometimes you can get great cards for a really good price. I mean, I think my bid for the Ricky Henderson one, I think I got it for $5, which is totally worth it. I mean, it's a great collector's value. I love Ricky Henderson. But we got a couple packs for you, just a little gift pack that includes the new Panini contenders for both basketball and football. So you got some of the new rookies in there, some of the autograph cards in there as well. So give us a call right now for your gift pack from Zootown Sports Cards. Call us here, 329-1899, and then go check out Zootown Sports Cards right across from Dornblazer Field, the corner of Higgins and South.
Very good. Giving the cards away. That is fantastic. After a slight hiatus, glory be to 2020. And we are back with the chick who doesn't know sports. Carolyn, hi. How are you?
Great. How are you today?
We're doing great. Happy New Year. Is everything well?
Everything is just divine.
Good.
I mean,
okay. No, you don't have to get into it. I just want a simple, short answer.
Maybe my fans want to know.
Well, they do know that everything's divine, which is very good, even better than I thought that we were going to get. Carolyn, if you are just joining us in the new year, if you decided at the new year to make a change in your life and move to Western Montana, move to the state of Montana, she's been helping us out for the last several months, identifying things in the world of sports that we don't really maybe identify the way that we should, because she doesn't really keep her finger on the pulse of sports out in the world, and then expresses her views to us about these very things, which invariably is insightful, at least. So, Carolyn, what do you got for us today? What have you been thinking about? You've had plenty of time to prepare.
Mm-hmm. Well, something great happened.
Wow, okay.
In football, and the Patriots lost.
The Patriots certainly did lose. You're going to take us way back in the news cycle to the Titans-Patriots
That's really not
game.
The story. The story is that Tom Brady doesn't know if he's going to keep playing football.
I think Tom Brady absolutely is going to keep playing football.
He doesn't know.
He does know.
He would know if he was going to the Super Bowl. He'd be like, yeah, I'm still playing. But
So
here's the thing. Tom Brady's never going to retire. Tom Brady is the most narcissistic person on planet Earth, and he thinks that he's like 30, even though he's 43.
I think I'm 30 or maybe
Well,
even
you act a lot more like 30 than psychopath Tom Brady does.
Wait, but that was a contradictory statement in the span of 30 seconds right there.
Tom is just so out there.
Here's the thing, okay? I understand there's a lot of people who love the Patriots, a lot of people that hate the Patriots. A lot of people love Tom Brady, a lot of people that hate Tom Brady. But that generally is reserved for people who actually do care or are interested in sports. But you have had an undying fury of hatred about Tom Brady.
I do.
Since I've ever known you with you got no roots in Boston. You're from Canada. You're supposed to be kind and docile. So where does this come from?
I have no idea. I truly don't know. I just despise him and his wife. And they don't eat, like, tomatoes. And, I can't deal with
He dressed up like an avocado for Halloween or whatever.
Probably.
No, he did.
The reason she doesn't like him is because she's right.
Yeah.
She just knows.
Sick
You
burn.
can just see when someone is exhaustively arrogant, dripping with arrogance. That's what he is.
And he said, can I say that?
Sure, Caroline. Could you do me though another big favor and just be Tom Brady's childhood pouty boy again?
I didn't get to go to the Super Bowl, so I'm not going to play football anymore. That's what I'm guessing is happening.
What else you got for us, Caroline?
Thanks for cutting our promo for us for next week. That's going to be on ESPN Radio 40 times next week at least.
Good. Antonio Brown.
I don't like this. What's next?
This is only going to go back.
Skip.
No,
Fast forward it.
No, I won't. And here's why. Because his agent is dropping him.
Yes.
That's how bad it is with him. His agent said until he gets help.
It's not just any agent. This is Drew Rosenhaus. This is the real life Jerry Maguire. This is the real life.
Take anybody.
I mean,
he says, show me the money.
Yes.
At one moment, Drew Rosenhaus was sitting there watching Terrell Owens doing sit-ups in his driveway and enabling this other crazy wide receiver to be a complete and utter narcissist. And Antonio Brown, I've honestly reached the point.
There's no
comparison to There's no comparison to Antonio Brown to anybody at this point. I've crossed the threshold with Antonio Brown. I feel bad for Antonio Brown because when you watch these videos that he's putting on Twitter and Instagram, he's completely lost his mind.
He's gone cuckoo.
I mean, it's not even like funny haha.
I'm not. I don't know. I mean, I'm just not. I don't know anything about Antonio Brown. I don't know Antonio Brown. I understand what you're saying about this stuff and what he's doing and how he's portraying and the things that he's up to, and it does not seem rational. Yeah, I agree with that. But I mean, I'm just not ready to sit here and pile on in any of these ways. I don't know. I'm just going to let this guy do his thing.
You know what you can do to support him? You can go on his Instagram and buy his new gummy line.
No. No. What's your next thing, Carolyn?
One last point on this Antonio Brown thing, though, because I do think that the most indicative thing that's happened in this saga is actually Drew Rosenhaus dropping him. Because what do we know about the NFL? If you can coach and you can play, you'll get a shot. And it doesn't really matter what your history is.
Now, we've seen some counterexamples of that, but in general,
I mean, we've had a lot of guys that have done a lot of horrific things. Antonio Brown has been a bad teammate, a very self-absorbed person, but he's not actually. And he was charged. Or he's in the middle of a civil suit that has to do with sexual assault, but he has actually not been charged with any criminal charges of any sort. We've seen guys that have come back to the NFL from felony charges
for sure
and played. And so to me, the fact that Drew Rosenhaus, who, I mean, he's not necessarily this moral compass,
the harbinger for ethical north.
Exactly. Yes. When he's dropping you, then that means it might be over for you.
It's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Okay. Anything else there,
I've got
Caroline?
one. I'm sure you've heard about Odell Beckham Jr.
Oh, yes.
There's an arrest warrant issued over him slapping the behind of a cop.
Yes, was it an officer or was it a security guard at the stadium? Who, I mean, either way,
I'm not sure, but But see what I did there. I don't really know what the big deal is and why you would be arrested for this.
Well, there's like three things that happened after the national championship game that, to me, none of them are a big deal, and everybody's making them a big deal, and I just think it's ridiculous. Odell Beckham's an LSU alum. LSU won the national championship. Odell Beckham had a wad of money in his pocket, and he was giving $100 handshakes to all the players. That's an NCAA violation, but like at this point, like who cares, man? Joe Burrow's going to the NFL.
Well, it isn't though. That's the point. Is that he gave them to them after the game, my understanding, to guys who were seniors who were done.
Oh, it was only seniors.
That's my understanding.
Okay, so
why is that against the rules?
No, it wouldn't be. That's why he did it, because this whole thing about not paying players, and so now that you're done playing, let the money fly.
It would be against the rules just because it could be considered an improper benefit because he is technically a booster as well as an alum. So if he was giving them money, that's an incentive for them to continue to play there. Who knows? Anyways, that's actually the most egregious of the three acts. He's also in hot water for
smacking a
butt, and he's also wasn't he involved in the cigar thing?
Well,
too?
I think this was all part of it. So there's a bunch of guys smoking cigars in the locker room afterwards, a bunch of players and so forth, and this particular, officer, security guard, whatever the capacity was, I'm not entirely sure, was evidently trying to, look, I don't know, ascertain or understand, like, if this was okay for this kid to be smoking. I don't know if it was a question of age or a question of where or whatever.
To stop smoking in the stadium.
It's inside a public area.
So he was saying stop smoking, and then he got a little
and so
slap.
Look, man, it's only a thing because millions of people were watching this sort of transpire, both on television and then later on the internet and on the Twitters and things like that. I am with you, Coulter. All of this can just go away, and it's not gonna bother me, one way or the other. That's what I think.
You're not going to lose sleep over it tonight?
I don't lose sleep over anything.
Okay. Good.
Ryan has the greatest life.
Right.
Yeah, that is a fact.
Ryan thinks he has no control over his own existence, therefore he just cruises in bliss.
That sounds dreamy.
I'm living on a wave of fate.
Wow. Lucky you.
And sleeping soundly.
Good for you. I'm just going to go guzzle wine and call it a night.
Carolyn, I don't know if thank you is the word, but thank you. As always, it's an adventure.
Well,
thanks for being here.
Thanks for being you.
Well, it's pretty easy, I guess. Evidently, it's pretty easy.
It is. That's why here everybody's idle.
Big Sky basketball. Grizz Cats in action tomorrow night. Next.
Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the advocates can help. Let us guide you through the process and take on the hassles for you so you can just focus on getting better.
If you've been injured in an accident, give the Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. The Advocates are on your side.
At the Montana Club, our goal is to create a menu of mouth-watering food with variety to satisfy any craving. From the garden-fresh ingredients in our salads to our succulent, perfectly grilled Montana Club Angus steaks, we take pride in every detail that goes into preparing your food. Top off your meal with a premium cocktail, wine, or microbrew. Come as you are and satisfy your craving with our home-style breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
There's a saying, opportunity never knocks twice. When you're ready to take advantage of your next opportunity, look to your local bank. Opportunity Bank of Montana. Opportunity Bank offers options for mortgage loans, small business loans, equipment financing, agriculture, and more. Our experienced team can provide solutions to help you welcome your next big opportunity. There's nothing like the feeling of progress. So let's get started today. Come see us at your local Opportunity Bank of Montana. OpportunityBank.com, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Coulter, it's a big championship weekend in the NFL. It's also a big basketball weekend in the Big Sky Conference. Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Happy Friday to you. Boys and girls, we meant to do this off the top. We didn't do it because we chug-a-lugged earlier in the day. Can we take with everybody, just briefly, a Florence Coffee Company coffee break? For crying out, it's Friday. It's a very nice evening, a little chilly. What's a great way to get your weekend started? How about some coffee from Florence Coffee Company kiosk? You drive in right now, get yourself some hot tea, maybe an Americano, maybe a latte. I don't know. I don't judge. Whatever you want to do. My kids like the poppy seed muffin tops. That's what they're always screaming to me about in the back seat, which they get from time to time because I am soft and cave to the pressure of a 3-year-old on the regular. In any case, go to the Florence Coffee Company. Get your weekend started off the way it should get started off, with a little bit of Joseph. Stay up late, sleep in, and have a wonderful weekend thanks to the Florence Coffee Company and their Friday afternoon coffee break. Coulter, the Grizzlies, men's and women's teams playing Idaho tomorrow. The Montana men in Missoula, the Lady Grizz in Moscow. And then their counterparts, the Montana State Bobcats, playing Eastern Washington. The Bobcats have had a full week off, have not played since last Saturday. And the men hosting the Eastern Washington Eagles and the Lady Cats on the road in Cheney. Coulter, Idaho 5-11. The men are 5-11 this year coming into Missoula. They played Eastern last night, so an interesting deal where the two teams that are playing the Grizz and Cats tomorrow played each other yesterday. Eastern Washington at home won that game. Was this Eastern or Moscow? I can't tell. In any case, 78-75, the final of that score. Eastern Washington won by 3 points. Idaho is now 5-11. We talked with Coach DeCure earlier this week, Coulter, and he said, you know what, this is the record, whatever. This is a dangerous team, and they have one of really the under-the-radar but truly premier players in the conference, the Idaho Vandals men's basketball team.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Trayvon Allen, there's no question he's one of the premier players in the conference. I mean, he's been a contributor at Idaho for 4 years. He has been their leading scorer the last couple of years, and he is the leading scorer in the Big Sky Conference during conference play right now. He's averaging 21 points per game. He's got good shooting splits. I mean, he's shooting 46% from the floor, 45.5% from three, and 80% from the free throw line. So, I mean, that's what you want from a guy who's a senior to be shooting like he is, and it's impressive he's shooting those sorts of splits considering he draws so much attention too.
Right.
With this Idaho team, I mean, Don Verlin fired in the offseason after 11 years at the helm, and that caused then the dominoes to fall. Mass exodus out of Moscow from the men's basketball program. They had 8 guys hit the transfer portal, including Cameron Tyson, who was one of the best freshmen in the league. Last year, Cameron Tyson broke Tyler Hall's single-season record for three-pointers in a season by a freshman. They also lost guys like Jared Rodriguez, who was a very good player. So this is an Idaho team that has a bunch of new faces. I mean, Trayvon Allen and Scott Blakeney were the only 2 guys from last year's squad who really got any playing time. The difference is that Idaho had 6 freshmen that they were playing last year, so that was supposed to be the foundation of the future. And I know there was a lot of Vandal fans that were very it's not Don Verlin. He's not necessarily beloved, but not necessarily he wasn't hated either. I think that he was just. I think most people were pretty fine with the job he has done. I think they were disappointed in the year when they had Vic Sanders and Perrin Collindrat and they did not win the title.
Right.
But they've had multiple 20-win seasons under Don Verlin, and he's done a lot better than guys that preceded him. But then when he left, they got rid of all those, or I guess all those young guys left. And so now, ironically, even though last year they were absolutely the youngest team in the league, now they're not. They're just one of the teams that has almost no experience playing with each other. They brought in 6 junior college transfers. They also brought in a drop down in Jack Wilson, who's a 7-footer, true 7-footer from Oregon State. And so, I mean, they've just been really trying to find their way. They're 0-6 on the road. They're only 1-4 in conference play. But the one win was over Portland State, who's a pretty solid team. But their losses, 62-60 to Idaho State, 69-68 to Weber State, 71-68 to Montana State, and 78-75 to Eastern Washington. So you're talking about a grand total of 9 points in 4 conference losses.
No doubt.
So they're knocking on the door. The thing that they've been doing well is they've been making people play their style. And that's one thing where Montana is so good at making people play their style. Who's going to get the upper hand in that element with the Vandals coming to town on Saturday night?
It is also, worth noting for Idaho, they're 5-11 overall. They're 1-4 in the Big Sky Conference, which is last. Okay, 11th out of 11. They're the only team that has not won on the road yet this season. They're 0-6 on the road. So when you look at all that, you go, well, last versus the first. It's on the home floor, the team that's in first place. This is a trap game for the Montana Grizzlies. They've been playing really well. We've talked about how much they've improved. We've talked about trying to keep the team's attention with Coach DeCure and what he's done in practice. And he has ways, right, of getting kids' attention and getting the team to practice. And I think he makes a very good point when he talks to a Sculptor about we as a team were trying to just get through practice. We weren't trying to get better. And that's that's easy to do, man, to just show up, do the drills, run through the thing, but not actively work in, which is a matter of will. It's even harder when you go up against a team that you go, we're better than this team. We're going to pound this team. And frankly, I don't think that's going to happen. Montana can and should win this game tomorrow. They're certainly favored to win this game. But if you just look at the wins and losses and that sort of thing, the numbers of this thing, you're going to think a lot less probably of Idaho versus Montana in Missoula in particular than you would. But the numbers don't bear that out. To your point, 4 losses in conference by a collective 10 points or whatever it was that you said. I mean, this is a team that has really come to play, has by no means phoned it in, and after having some laughable losses early in their season, has really come along, and frankly, in that respect, sort of mirrors Montana. And so this is a game that's, and by the way, it's Montana, Idaho, right? I mean, exactly. At the end of the day, it's the Vandals and the Grizzlies. That's a big deal, and this is going to be the one shot to watch this team and watch this rivalry in Missoula.
The Grizz have 3 seniors, but they have most of the guys in their rotation are freshmen and sophomores, with the exception of the one junior in the whole program, really, in Timmy Falls.
Yeah.
But I think that the older guys, especially the guys from Montana, Kendall Manuel and Jared Sampson, I mean, this is a unique situation that Montana's got with the fact that they have 2 seniors that are from Montana that are viable players, not just,
I mean, not viable. I mean,
they're leading players. Kendall Manuel right now is lighting the league. I mean, he's got himself at least to 6 games in. Got himself on track to be an all-league player. So, and Sampson's been very solid as well. They understand that this is a rivalry game. Travis DeCure certainly understands that Idaho is a big rival, and I think that because of that, the younger guys will quickly understand as well. So we watched them practice a little bit on Wednesday, I guess it was, and things are really falling into place for this Montana team, just in terms of the hierarchy of leadership. Syed Pridgett, who's not a guy I really expected to emerge as this this pinnacle leader. He has been. A guy like Derek Carter Hollinger, you can tell he looks up to Saeed Pridgett so much. Saeed's always encouraging Derek Carter Hollinger.
Yes.
And I think Saeed, he's not a very talkative guy. I mean, we've had him on this show. He did the ESPN Roundtable with him. I think we had to ask him 200 questions.
I think he's incredibly talkative. It just doesn't take him long.
No, right. That's true. He spits his line real quick. I mean, he's 2 sentences, and that's it. He's not a lot of elaboration. He answers your questions, and you're right. He does. He says it very quick and makes his point without using too many words. But he's such a great leader by example. I think that his versatility and his ability to thrive in multiple different situations, multiple different positions, has really rubbed off on the rest of the team. And now everybody's kind of fallen in line. I think that the Grizz are starting to learn their roles, embrace their roles. This game on Saturday, though, it just comes down to, like you said, avoiding the trap element of it and shutting down Trayvon Allen. Because Trayvon Allen is a great player. So Montana's got to be ready.
For Montana State, they host Eastern Washington, and just on the balance of a season, this is as big a first half of the season game as I think Montana State could have. They're at home. They're 3-3. They're going up against Eastern Washington, who is 3-2, but they've had a full week off, and they're coming off a disappointing 1-point loss in a street fight with Portland State that they lost at the buzzer. And now have a full week to prepare for the team that is currently number 3 in the Big Sky Conference standings in Eastern Washington, and certainly a team that is expected to contend in this conference. And so your shot to get them at home coming off a week of rest/preparation and all of that, this is a big test for Danny Sprinkle and the Bobcats to get over 500, to leapfrog Eastern Washington in the standings, and to, hold serve against the other good teams in the conference that you need to do if you're going to be one of the other teams that's going to compete. And right now, I mean, there's a whole bunch between 3-2 and 2-4 is like 8 or 9 of the 11 teams in the conference. I guess 8 of the 11 teams are in that window. There is no separation between in the middle of this thing, and Montana State of even 500 is dead in the middle of it. So this is a big game to me for Montana State to try and get a great win, but win with the rest and the preparation that favors them at home against a good Eastern Washington club.
No doubt. And I mean, when you look around the league too, I mean, the Grizz are the only team that really has any blowout type wins, and that's the Grizz last 2 wins. But you look at the Grizz first 2 conference wins. They beat Sac State by 2. They beat Southern Utah by 2. I guess they beat Northern Arizona by 7. But then they went back-to-back 2-point wins. You look at Eastern Washington right now, they're 3-2 in league. They beat Weber State by 2. They beat Portland State by 2. And they beat Idaho last night by 3. So you're talking less than 10 points total margin of victory for multiple teams in the league. I think it shows just how razor-thin the margin of error is. Montana State's the exact same way. They've been either a 2 or 3 point winner or a 2 or 3 point loser in 5 of their 6 conference games. The only team that's really made any sort of statement type wins has been Montana, and so we'll see if that can continue. I don't think they really have a chance to make much of a statement Saturday as much as they just have to take care of business against a team that they're expected to beat. Montana State, though, they do have a chance to sort of. Montana State's the most middle of the league team in the league. Until they're not, and if they win on Saturday, they're not. You can say they're definitive. I mean, I'm not sure if Montana State is between. I think they could be as good as 3rd or 4th, and they could also be in line to play in that 8-9 game.
Right,
they could make a step into being in the top half of the league with a win on Saturday.
This to me is a statement game for Montana State to Montana State.
Yes,
they need to show for themselves that they are a team that is going to win games at home on rest against anybody that comes into town. I think that's important for them to show that. And then, yes, to be above a 500 team and to start to get into that top half and further in the conference standings. Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Can we talk some big-time college hoops for just a second here?
Sure.
Okay. The Gonzaga, that was sort of pejorative. I didn't mean to do that. It's, It's all big time, but I'm talking about top 25, okay? Rankings, that's all I'm trying to say. I didn't mean to, disparage anybody here. The Gonzaga Bulldogs have been number one for a little while now in the nation. And it's a number one ranking that has been passed around to 8-10 teams already. I mean, I don't know how many.
A lot of teams.
Everybody's had it. Baylor is right there in the AP poll at number 2. In fact, Baylor has one more first place vote than does Gonzaga, but at the end of the day, they tally up the points. Gonzaga is number 1 overall. Now, Gonzaga just played Santa Clara. David, how many alma maters do you have? You went to 6 or 7 colleges, right? In your
3
trail.
I went to 3.
3. You went Santa Clara being 1. Did you go to Arizona State?
I did not go to Arizona State. My girlfriend did.
Okay, big Arizona State guy because your girlfriend's there. You went to Wyoming. Where else did you go?
I went to Texas A&M as well.
Okay. So our guy David's been around a little bit, and you have a very, a tradition of watching the annihilation that is Gonzaga v. Santa Clara every time that it's on.
That's correct. It's the one game at Santa Clara that people care about, so you got to watch it on TV, or when it's at Santa Clara, you go to the game. But
it is if you've been in there and you went to the school, then when it's on national TV, you're like, hey, this is great. Well, everybody here can relate to that, right? When Montana State is playing on, whatever it is, even if it's the Pac-12 network or whatever, you kind of tune in, you get a kick out of it, see what's going on.
Exactly.
And Santa Clara had an early lead, and then it just didn't quite last. Is that what happened this last match?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to my Broncos and their current head coach, also former Arizona State head coach Herb Sendek. They were up on the number 1 program in the country 2 minutes into the game, 5-4. 5-4. After that, they took their 50-point beating and headed back to the sunny state of California, but they were winning there.
Now, you slipped in something here. Usually I feel like I'm pretty good about this. Is Santa Clara the Broncos?
Yeah, Santa Clara Broncos. Go Coes, baby.
I didn't know that. See, I knew that they weren't the Banana Slugs. Okay.
That's UC Santa Cruz.
Right. But I thought they were another one of those oddballs. I didn't know they were the Broncos.
No, just the Broncos.
Now, Santa Clara, Levi Stadium is in Santa Clara.
That's correct.
So how far is campus from that stadium?
It's 15-minute drive, and you don't have to get on the interstate, so you don't actually have to worry about traffic.
You just cruise. When they built that, now, how long have they been playing in there? I mean, it's only been 4 years or something, right?
The first year of Levi Stadium was when I was a freshman in college. Was that
a big deal? Obviously it was a big deal, but were people pumped about it, or did they hate it? They're like, no, get these guys. We got enough traffic to deal with.
It's literally the worst stadium experience I've ever been a part of in my whole life.
What?
I've been to hockey games, football games, and soccer games there, and they've all been just horrendous.
You went to a hockey game there? Did they have one of the winter games there?
They had a stadium series game there.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to back off of this. Oh, go ahead, Coulter. I know you.
Just for context here, Santa Clara, he's not exaggerating, did lose by 50. They lost 104-54. Okay, but just bear with me here. Gonzaga is currently averaging 88.7 points and giving up 66.7. So their average margin of victory is 22 points.
Yeah.
But that doesn't even do it justice. They've won 13 games by 25 or more, 9 games of 30 or more, 5 games of 40 or more. And this is the third in one season that they've won by 50. That's outrageous. I've never seen anything like that.
Now, I can honestly say here, now I like Gonzaga. I root for Gonzaga. I'm in this, kind of
you want to hear something
thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, but I haven't watched them play it. Why are they good? I mean, they're always good. I get that. And Mark Few's got it dialed in. They got a great program. But they had a bunch. I mean, they had 2 first rounders, right? And
yeah,
Yashi was like what's his name here?
Rui Hachimura and Brandon Clark both went in the first round.
But Hachimura went 9th overall, and he's doing great for the Wizards, right?
So was Brandon Clark for the Grizzlies.
Okay,
for the Grizzlies, the Memphis version.
What are they rolling with now? How are they doing it?
Well, they have a grad transfer from Texas A&M named Admon Gilder, Killian Tilly is still there.
Sure,
Corey Kispert is still there. They have this guy, I can't remember where he's from, Petrushev, but he plays on the block now.
Okay. So they just
I think he's Serbian.
They just got
Serbian.
I think he went to Montverde, where
Montverde,
where I think isn't that where
Ben Simmons went there?
Ben Simmons and Ramad Rory were roommates at.
That's
Montverde.
right. Yeah. Okay, so Dave, what were you going to say though, David? I don't want
to put some more context onto this beatdown. Gonzaga was a 20-point favorite.
Yes.
And they were up 36 at halftime. And for the second half, they were still a 5-point favorite. So, like, after they've played one half of basketball, Vegas was like, they're going to win this game by 41, and they won it by 50. I mean, just utter domination.
It's covering all over the place. Well, that's good. I'm glad we got a little Gonzaga talk in. Zag Santa Clara, the annual affair that is.
Yes.
The Broncos and the Bulldogs from Central Cal, right? No Cal, okay, I don't know.
The Bay Area, Silicon Valley.
There we go.
Northern California.
That's it. It ain't. It though isn't. I know it is Northern California in terms of the popular discussion. It's not Northern California.
Not really. No, it's like in the middle of the state.
I mean, it's completely Central California. You can't be more dead center than the Bay. Thank you, David. Very helpful. So Texas A&M and Wyoming and Santa Clara and Arizona State. I know he didn't go, but I mean, that's like, we're getting a lot of good stuff out of D. Graff on this here now. Quick break. On the other side, some more work that David did for us. Doug Russell. He hosts evening sports talk show on 94.5 ESPN Radio in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He's also the anchor on the same station, WTMJ, for the Packers opening drive every game day, the pregame show for the Green Bay Packers. He joins us next to talk NFC Championship game, which is happening in the worst stadium experience that you could possibly have, evidently, in Santa Clara at Levi's Stadium. We'll talk about that next.
Hi there. It's Les Schwab Tires. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes and shocks and wheels and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer all that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at night, because all those services affect things like steering and stopping. That's why we offer more than tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
Experience matters. Walk into any Farmer State Bank to learn just how much. You'll find an experienced staff of professionals ready and willing to go the extra mile to help you succeed. Bank on the go with mobile and internet banking solutions, or enjoy our legendary personal service face-to-face in the lobby. Visit farmersebank.com or a location near you to learn more. Farmer State Bank, your Montana bank since 1907, member FDIC.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Hey guys, Ryan Tootell and Colton Nuanez from Tootell and Nuanez. Hey, we're not just here for your entertainment, we're also a bastion of knowledge and information as well.
If you want to know what's going on in the world of youth sports, from sign-ups to camps and other activities, tune into Tootell and Nuanez on Tuesday.
That's right, interviews and information with people who know to make sure that your kids get all the best in sports that Missoula has to offer this Tuesday on Tootell and Nuanez.
The youth sports segment is brought to you by Pepsi Cola of Missoula, proudly supporting youth athletics in the Garden City.
Have you been hurt or disabled? Are you missing time from work and not sure what to do? I'm attorney Chris Helmer, and Clark Fork Law Offices in Missoula is here to help. Our team specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. We fight for the benefits you deserve. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening, Ryan Tootell, Coulter Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Sports Center. Hey, a pair of Montana standout female athletes made news with their athletic futures Thursday. Columbia Falls javelin thrower Angelica Street committed to Texas A&M for her college future, and former Bozeman High soccer player Avery Collins, she was drafted pro first round of the National Women's Soccer League by the Washington Spirit.
Street, who owns the Montana girls all-class record in the javelin, signed a national letter of intent with the Aggies last fall. Over the summer, Street went to an elite throws camp in College Station and made a strong impression. Street hit several javelin throws in the mid-160-foot range, which is near the cutoff for the U.S. Olympic trials team. Street's best market competition last year, a 158-foot, 8-inch heave. She's won 21 straight high school meets, including back-to-back Class A state championships.
Avery Collins, who was the former Montana Gatorade Player of the Year in soccer, was a 3-year starter at Stanford, as we said earlier, has now been drafted in the first round by the National Women's Soccer League by the Washington Spirit. She helped the Cardinal to a Pac-12 championship in 3 straight seasons, as well as the 2017 national title. She grad transferred to Washington State last year in 24 games, had 6 goals and 5 assists.
This ESPN Sports Center is presented by Clark Fork Law.
So come on and tickety check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Now from the Kurtz Polaris studio, here is Ryan Tootell and Coulter Nuanez.
Happy to be with you on a Friday evening. Boys and girls, 5 o'clock. Welcome to your weekend. Thanks for letting Coulter and I escort you down the aisle. Hope you have fun plans set up for you. It is, after all, championship weekend, and we're going to talk some NFC championship football here in just a moment with somebody who knows a little something about it. Doug Russell, host Sports Talk Show, evening show on 94.5 ESPN Milwaukee, also anchors the pregame show for the Green Bay Packers there in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So we'll have him on in just a minute. Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana television across the great state. If you'd like to find us on the World Wide Web, you can do that, 1029ESPN.com. You can listen live on the stream. The stream available wherever you get online. Well, that's the deal. It's very easy, very simple, and worldwide. How about that? Listen to the stream, 1029ESPN.com. Thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. You can also, if you missed anything in the show, check it out on the podcast. Podcast available wherever you get your podcasts. Podcast out there all the time. That's the beauty of it. It's at your convenience, people. Do it on your time. Podcast available thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel, as well as Blackfoot Communications. We go now to the Reagan Brothers RV phone line, and we welcome in the host on 94.5 ESPN Radio in Milwaukee from 6 to 8 p.m., also anchors the Packers opening drive for Green Bay Packers pregame shows. Doug Russell joining us. Doug, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing great. My pleasure. How you guys doing?
Well, we're doing outstanding. Excited for championship weekend, of course, and with the Green Bay Packers heading to San Francisco, a pretty epic showdown in the NFC. Obviously, a long history of pretty incredible games between these two franchises. But when you look at this particular matchup, San Francisco, obviously that dominant defense, they are favored against the number and all that kind of stuff. But how can Green Bay go out there and maybe learn something from their worst loss of the season and turn it around this Sunday?
I asked Aaron Jones that, actually, after the divisional game last Sunday against the Seahawks. Actually, I asked Devontae Adams the same question as well, and they both said that you can just learn tendencies from it, but you can learn from what the 49ers did, maybe with their cadence and some other things like that. But other than that, I mean, you're right. It was the Packers' worst performance of the year. It was probably San Francisco's best performance of the year. It was certainly their most dominant performance of the year. And the Packers, quite frankly, are going to have to do everything differently, from committing to the run, staying committed to the run, not getting frustrated when things go poorly. You can't turn the ball over. I wouldn't say that you should just burn the tape. I mean, there's two schools of thought. You either burn the tape or you learn from the tape. And I think the Packers, at least from what they have said, they don't want to burn the tape. They would rather just learn from the tape. And since that game, they've ripped off 6 straight wins. So I think their communication is a lot better. I do think that they learned a few things about that San Francisco game, but the 49ers present an incredible challenge for them. And the way I look at it is it's not supposed to be easy to go to the Super Bowl, and this isn't going to be an easy game for Green Bay, certainly. And I think the hope is that the Packers don't make it an easy game for San Francisco either.
These last few years following the Packers, they have had a ton of talent, specifically, obviously, at the quarterback position with one of the greats in the game in Aaron Rodgers. But there was just such a level of disconnect, and it seems like there was just such a level of dysfunction as well. But this year it seems like they have so much more harmony, especially the second half of the year with Matt LaFleur as the head coach. So both in just the dynamic of the team as well as the schematic elements of what they're doing on the field, how have you seen Green Bay evolve from the last couple of years to now this year, which has been one of their better years in the last few?
Yeah, I'll take the second part of that question first. As far as schematics, I think what you're seeing this year is a true commitment to the run. And, you know, you look at the games that the Packers have lost, and in all 3 of those games, they got away from the run. And they played really poorly in the month of November. They got pounded at Los Angeles against the Chargers, a team that was certainly sub-500 this season. I know they had a good year a year ago, but the Chargers took it to them, and Green Bay got away from the run. And that's one of the reasons that they were never competitive in that game. And then in San Francisco, they got behind early, and the same thing happened. And Matt LaFleur has really been introspective about those 2 games, saying that schematically, when they did get away from the run, they kind of got away from what made them successful in the first half of the season. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Packers dominated the last 5 games of the regular season, because they didn't. There was a 1-score game against the Giants in that game right after the game at San Francisco against the 49ers. They wound up pulling away in the end, and I thought that was a decent win for the Packers. But, you know, then their next game against the Redskins went right down to the last play, and the Packers had to field an onside kick and not fumble it away before they could, you know, go into the victory formation. Their game against the Bears the week after that ended on a 2-yard line after a wild play from Mitch Trubisky. And then I thought, played a good game, maybe their best game of the regular season against Minnesota, but then they played Detroit again. And my favorite statistic from this season is the Packers played Detroit twice this season. Packers beat the Lions twice. They led cumulatively in both of those games by a combined 0 seconds. 2 last-second field goals where they trailed the entire game is how they won those games. So they weren't dominant. But what they were able to do is, you know, they say good teams win close games, right? And the Packers have been able to win close games. I think they're a good team. We'll see exactly how good, I think, on Sunday.
You know, it is interesting, though, on that point, because that has been something where people have sort of kept Green Bay at arm's length to some extent. And on one hand, if you're 14-3, you're going to the NFC Championship game, you got Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback. Usually you sit here and you're popping bottles of champagne talking about how great and wonderful this team is. But they haven't had that because, like you said, they haven't had the dominant performances that they've had, and they're going up against a team who they were dominated by earlier in the year. Is that, though, something that actually might be good? I mean, we know the chip on the shoulder that Aaron Rodgers likes to either have or create and kind of, as he talked about, flying under the radar and that. Is that something that maybe the Packers can use to their advantage?
I think it's worked for Aaron over the course of his career. I mean, he's played with a chip on his shoulder since he wasn't drafted by, ironically enough, the 49ers back in the 2005 NFL draft. Instead, it was Alex Smith, and Aaron Rodgers was sitting there until 24 where the Packers took him. So that's something that's fueled his entire career, and he's downplayed it over the years, but he's full of crap. I mean, it's something that it's been on his mind, and I think it will be on his mind until the day that he gets his gold jacket in Canton. And maybe it'll still be on his mind after that. So it's something that has fueled his entire career, and it generally has been to the Packers' benefit. So I think that they can use that underdog status to their advantage to a certain extent, because it's something that they keep talking about. They keep talking about it publicly. They keep talking about it in the locker room after games. They keep talking about, well, nobody thought we could do this, or we went ugly doing that. Nobody thought this, or nobody thought that. So it's certainly on their minds. And look, if you're a Packers fan, honestly, I think you've got to be thinking that you're already playing with house money just to get to the NFC Championship game. But they also played with house money back in 2010 when they were the last team to get into the playoffs as the number 6 seed, and they wound up running the table and winning the Super Bowl. So Mike Holmgren, years and years and years ago, used to preach, just get to the tournament, just get to the tournament, just get to the tournament. Well, Packers are definitely in the tournament, and they've only got one game left to play before they get to the Super Bowl.
Doug Russell joining us. He hosts the evening show on 94.5 ESPN in Milwaukee and also anchors the Packers opening drive every game day. And when you talk about this team in this particular location and Aaron Rodgers' return to California and all of that, this isn't, as you said, Matt LaFleur has committed so much to the run game, and Aaron Jones has been outstanding. That offensive line has been outstanding. How much does this, though, mean to Aaron Rodgers specifically to be back in California against that Niners team, like like you talked about before in this spot?
Yeah, if you ask him, then it's just a way to get to the Super Bowl, but it's not. I mean, again, it's that chip on his shoulder that I was just talking about. That's what has fueled his entire career, and every time he plays San Francisco, he wants to stick it to them. Now, it doesn't always work out that way, but that's always his goal. And look, on game day, or not on game day, on draft day, I should say, back in 2005, he was asked, I think it was by Chris Mortensen, but I'm not 100% sure, but it was somebody on ESPN who asked him, how do you feel about the 49ers passing on you and drafting Alex Smith? And he said something to the effect of, I'm not as sorry as they're going to be that they didn't draft me. And that's held true. Aaron, I've been around sports a long time, right? And I have never been around an athlete quite like Aaron Rodgers. I've never been around an athlete smarter than Aaron Rodgers. I've never been around an athlete who knows he's the smartest guy in the room more than Aaron Rodgers. And I've never been around an athlete who has a thinner skin but can use it in a good way more than Aaron Rodgers. He's very sensitive. He holds grudges. But again, that's one of the things that's turned him into a Hall of Fame quarterback. And if that, lifts this Packers team into a second Super Bowl appearance and maybe a second Super Bowl championship during the Aaron Rodgers era, I think he'll take that. I'm certain that the Packers fans would take that as well.
What is the window for that? Because to me, Aaron Rodgers, in terms of his talent and production, is an all-time great. And he has the one Super Bowl ring, but a second one could be such a feather in his cap. What's the window, though, for him to win that second ring?
Yeah, it's closing fast, right? He's 36 years old. As I like to say, he's already playing with that gold jacket on his shoulders. He's already playing with a Buston Canton. But he hasn't had the same – he's not going to make the same throws at the age of 36 that he made at the age of 31, for example, when he won his second MVP award, or when he was 28 years old and he won his first MVP award. He's just not that guy anymore. He does still have guile. He does still have leadership ability. He still can make incredible throws, just not the same incredible throws on the same consistent basis. He'll miss guys every now and then, but look, Father Time is undefeated, and I would say that if he doesn't win one this year, next year, or the year after that, it's not going to happen, and that it's unfortunate for Aaron. I know he wants to play until he's 45. That's not going to happen. Aaron Rodgers is still playing at any level at the age of 40. I think that, first of all, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's got maybe 2 or 3 years left in the NFL because I don't think he wants his skills so eroded that he's a shell of his former self. And, he's staring his own football mortality in the face right now, so he knows that window is starting to close, and it's closing pretty rapidly.
It's obvious enough to talk about quarterbacks, and obviously when Aaron Rodgers is one of them, but both sides of the ball, the lines for the Green Bay Packers have improved as much as I've seen in a team the last probably 2 seasons. And that is where this thing's going to get done. And they were, overrun in the first game, particularly offensively, against this team. And we know how good the San Francisco defensive line is. But when you talk about that matchup in the trenches in really both directions, you feel like Green Bay really has a pretty good shot, as good a shot as anybody against the San Francisco team, right?
I hope you're right. I don't know that you are, but I hope you're right.
I mean, it is Bosa. I get that. Sure, you have the Forrest Buckner, but Valaga, I don't know, Lindsley, Bakhtiari, that's pretty good.
Yeah, they're all right. And Brian Valaga, He had to miss the game against the Seahawks because he woke up with a bad case of the flu. Gerald Velt here came out of retirement a few weeks ago to help bolster the Packers' offensive line, and he was fantastic last week against the Seahawks. So they have a little bit more depth than they've had in recent years as well. There's a lot of glue guys on this Packers team that don't get the headlines. I mean, a guy like Jamal Williams, I think, could be a 1,000-yard rusher for another team in the NFL. Instead, he's content. He's a really cool guy to be around as well. He's just always relaxed. Ask him sometimes about the movie Frozen, and he'll go off on a 2-minute diatribe about everything. I mean, it's crazy. But he's one of those glue guys. Yeah, he's an interesting cat. But he's content being behind Aaron Jones and letting Aaron Jones get all of the headlines and all of the touchdowns and the glory that goes along with that. But the Packers wouldn't be where they are right now without Jamal Williams being maybe one of the best second fiddle type running backs in the NFL. They've got a whole team of these guys. So and it's going to take all 47 guys to dress on Sunday as well if they're going to beat the 49ers. I don't think it's going to be an easy game for the Packers. I don't think it should be an easy game for the Packers. I'm not picking them to win the game, but as long as they can play to their best ability, they're going to give themselves a puncher's chance. And really, I think that's all they can ask.
Doug, last thing for you here. We know that the fan base in Wisconsin and really nationwide for the Green Bay Packers is as substantial as it gets. But when you talk about that state and that team that has had, obviously, their Super Bowl championship, but a lot of heartbreak since that time as well, how much does this game mean to the state of Wisconsin?
I think that if nothing else, Packers fans in Wisconsin are pragmatic. Nobody picked them to go 13-3 when the regular season began. First-year head coach Matt LaFleur, there was a lot of question marks as to how he and Aaron are going to communicate. Turns out the answer to that question is pretty well. But I don't think that there are many Packers fans who have booked their tickets to Miami and gotten tattoos about being the Super Bowl 54 champions just yet. I don't think there's that level of confidence. I think it means a lot. And, if you ask me this question after the Packers, if they are able to win on Sunday night, if you ask me the same question on Monday, I think the state's going to go bananas. But I also think that the state is right now steeled for perhaps another disappointment because I don't think that there's the feeling that they're quite there yet, and maybe they need another playmaker or two, one on offense, one on defense, and then they will be in a position to maybe go to Super Bowl 55. And that's kind of the feeling that I get talking to some of my listeners on my show on ESPN in Milwaukee.
Doug Russell, hosts on ESPN Milwaukee 94.5. Doug, where can people follow you on the social medias and listen to you?
My Twitter handle is very difficult. It's at Doug Russell.
How did you get that? I mean, what do you had to write a letter to Twitter to get that one? That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, actually, because there was a guy who was squatting on it when I wanted it, for myself. It's not that uncommon a name.
Right.
He's just squatting on it, right? So I had something like Russell on Sports or something ridiculous like that, and I changed it once or twice, and I was never really happy with it. So I wrote the guy, and I said, hey, if you're not going to use this, can I just have my name for Twitter? And I didn't hear from him for a year and a half. And then I tweeted him again, and he wrote back this nasty note to me. He says, if you wanted it, you should have just asked me when you wanted it. And then 30 seconds later, he came back and said, oh, yeah, I guess you did. Yeah, here you can go ahead and have it. So that's how I got it.
Well, good for you. So at Doug Russell on Twitter, not even the Doug Russell, okay? Just at Doug Russell on Twitter. Go check him out. Follow him. Does a great job there in ESPN Milwaukee. And for my part in it, I got a lot of family members listening to Doug Russell in the great state in southeastern Wisconsin over there. So, Doug, we appreciate you being with us. Thanks so much.
Anytime, guys. So happy to do it.
There you go. Doug Russell joining us from ESPN Milwaukee talking NFC Championship game. For a guy who covers the Packers, he did not engender a ton of confidence into people who might be Packers fans about the chances that Green Bay has this weekend. Not to, glom on or, kick the horse while he's down or however you want to talk about it. But in the last 13 times that a team has lost in the regular season by 20 or more points, which Green Bay did to San Francisco, that then met the team that they lost by 20 or more points to in the postseason, they're 0-13 in the last 13.
Wait, so the team that lost by 20 lost again?
Lost again. That's right.
Interesting.
You don't lose, it's one thing to lose close It's another thing to get blown out, and Green Bay got blown out. And, yeah, I mean, like I keep looking at this thing, trying to figure out what are the ways in which the, my mighty Green Bay Packers can come out of this thing with a win. And there are a number of ways, but there's more ways in which San Francisco comes out with a win when you really line it up and look at what's there. I mean, this is the number 2 rushing team. And nobody's talking about it. Everybody wants to talk about, Bosa and DeForest Buckner, and rightfully so. You should talk about them. They're terrifying. But this is number 2 rushing team in football right here. 100 and almost 50 yards a game. This is a team that is absolutely doing it the way you're supposed to do it, especially in the postseason. Everybody talks about defense and running, but nobody really does them both. And no one does them both to the level that the San Francisco 49ers have found a way to do it. And they feel like, first of all, they're built for the long haul. The other thing is they just look sterling against the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, a lot of this is just sort of eye test as much as anything. What do you do if Dalvin, God bless Aaron Jones, but if Dalvin Cook is rushing for 20 yards or whatever it is, how is he supposed to get loose? How's Aaron Jones going to get it done? I don't know. I don't know. I don't see it in that respect. That said, I do think it's actually going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a competitive game, and I think that the Green Bay Packers have a puncher's chance. But if San Francisco can avoid mistakes and just lean on Green Bay, Green Bay kind of did to Seattle, and Seattle kind of did to Philadelphia what I think San Francisco could potentially do to Green Bay, and that is, if you take it across the board, the gap in talent isn't as big as it was like Green Bay to Seattle, but it's still there. I think the talent is with the San Francisco 49ers, and I think ultimately they probably find a way to get this thing done. But I'm holding out hope. And by the way, speaking of Wisconsin, it's my Uncle Steve's birthday today over there in Racine, Wisconsin. So shout out Steve Brusco. Happy birthday to him. And then maybe that's the key that the Packers need to victory. Also because, Coulter, we both know if we walk in Monday and Green Bay is not going to the Super Bowl, it's going to be a very ugly and emotional meeting that we're going to be having first thing on Monday morning.
Don't remind me. For that alone, I might just go for the Packers.
Well, yeah. If your rooting is the thing that tips the apple cart in the favor of the Green Bay Packers, that's fine.
You mentioned the Niners running game, and I think that you're correct. And first of all, it's not as if they're not getting as much credit as they deserve, but it's the way that they've done it. It's been a completely new and innovative way of running the football in the NFL. I mean, traditionally, for years and years, line up, hit people, Walter Payton running guys over, O.J. Simpson, Eric Dickerson running by guys, Barry Sanders juking guys out of their shoes. But now in the NFL, you got to feature back until you don't, because all of these guys just burn out so fast. And any guy that gets 300-plus carries in a year, it seems like that's just the death sentence. You're going to be – your clock is ticking at twice the speed the moment you get 300 carries. We've seen it happen with guys like Ricky Williams and Jamal Lewis and Priest Holmes and Larry Johnson and all these guys that as soon as they get that big carry year, I mean, one of the only guys that could really survive it was Adrian Peterson. And even he now, it is – almost mid-30s, has taken a step back too. But the Niners are doing it with two things that make them different than almost anybody else in the league. And I think that one of the two things is the fact that, first of all, they truly play 4 running backs when Mostert, Breida, Tevin Coleman are all healthy. But the thing is, that wasn't even expected to be their dudes. Jerick McKinnon was supposed to be one of the dudes. They signed him to a big contract, and then he gets injured, and he misses the whole year. So those guys emerging and stepping up is huge.
But how about Mike Pearson over there doing it, and Joe Staley?
Well, Joe Staley, Mike McGlinchey. I mean, they've fortified their offensive line certainly through the draft. They've used first-round draft picks, especially. I mean, McGlinchey was a top 10 pick. But they also have done it with a fullback that's not a traditional fullback. And they've also done it with a tight end who can also play wing and H and all sorts of things. And their offense has so many college-like elements to it. Even though Kyle Shanahan is an NFL guy from the time he first even knew about football because of his dad. but they have zone blocking schemes, but all sorts of college-like pre-snap motions. And that's why Juszczyk is so valuable, the fullback, because it's not just put his hand in the dirt in front of the running back and let him be the lead blocker through the hole. They put him in motion. They use him to kick out the edge. They use George Kittle to kick out the edge a lot of times too. And then the way that the running backs complement each other, I mean, Raheem Mostert, he could have been Raheem Mostert could have been a Olympic caliber track guy. I mean, he ran a 10-1 in the 100 when he was in high school. I mean, that's crazy.
It's crazy.
And so, but then Tevin Coleman is a little bit more of a bruising type back. Breida is certainly a physical type back. So they have ways to contrast it. And I just think it's been so smart to watch them play. I mean, I think that Shanahan, the offensive brilliance, it's so much easier to see with when Doug Peterson's RPO stuff took the league by storm, or when Sean McVay's intricate mechanism of an offense took the league by storm last year. Shanahan's not getting enough credit because it's not as sexy, but it to me, it's equally as innovative.
Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. The last thing I want to say here on the Niners, the thing that has been sort of, the Niners were not very good. They were good last year. You could see them improving. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, but they were bad 2 years ago. They were only okay last year. And all of a sudden, here they are, and they look like they, they're the favorites to go to the Super Bowl from the NFC. And there's a level at which they're so young that I think that there's been a sort of bit of incredulity about whether this team is actually ready to do it. It's clear that they are actually ready to do it. But again, until you have, who knows? But the youth on this defense is unbelievable. And you go, well, what is this going to be for the next 5 years or whatever in San Francisco? Of course, you always do that, and then invariably things happen or whatever. But it's they're a very good football team. But I also think that Green Bay, for whatever it's worth, is even better than what people give them credit for. Again, I don't know that I'm picking them to win, but I'm just saying I think this is going to be a better. I think this has a chance to be a really, really good football game. We'll take a break. On the other side, what's going on around the Big Sky Conference outside of just the Montana schools? It was a game night in the Big Sky after all last night, and also a little later on, we got the most important thing that was said in the airwaves this week on Tootell and Nuanez. We'll bring that to you as well. Hey, tomorrow, Saturday, this is cool. The Sealy Lake Drift Riders. They're up there in Sealy. They're riding their snowmobiles around. They're getting all the trails safe, making them rideable, but also a great and enjoyable experience. They're having their annual snowball fundraiser. It's at Paws Up. Out there, headed out Highway 200 by Lincoln, or towards Lincoln, I should say. Not quite out there, 26 miles or so. Beautiful spot out there if you know about it. And you can go online right now to their Facebook page, or check out, just Google Sealy Lake Drifters. You go onto their SealyLakeDrifters.org, and you can get tickets. There's a dinner out there. You can go to the dinner. If you're a member, it's $50. If you're not, it's $80. There's a ton of prizes. They're giving away, are you ready, 2 snowmobiles. They're giving away a bunch of cash prizes, and they also are going to have Levi LaValle, a 13-time medalist in X Games as a snowmobiler. He holds the world record for the longest snowmobile jump. Go on YouTube, watch this thing with the other 8 million people who have watched it. Like 360 feet, Coulter. A football field and 60 feet. And 60
on a
feet.
Snowmobile.
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
Anyway, he's going to be there, signing autographs, hanging out. So you should go. Again, it's for a great cause for the Sealy Lake Drifters. It's their annual fundraiser, the Snowball. It's out there at Paws Up. Go online, check out the Sealy Lake Drift Riders. I said drifters, drift riders. Okay, they're not. They got snowmobiles. That's what they're doing. The Drift Riders. So go on, check it out, and head up to Paws Up tomorrow evening for a great night, a great meal, and a great raffle, a ton of fun, and see, well, the best guy to do it of everybody, Levi LaValle, as well. Tomorrow night, Paws Up.
Now,
now. The Montana Club's happy hour features BOGO beverages. Our expertly mixed cocktails, microbrews, domestics, and wine are buy one, get one free 7 days a week from 3 to 5:30. Stop in on Friday for Montini night. Sip on a top shelf martini for only $6, 5:30 to close. When you've worked hard all day and are ready to relax, the Montana Club has got you covered with BOGO happy hour 7 days a week, 3 to 5:30 on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up.
After a hard day at the office, there's nothing like kicking back with a cold one. Town Pump's got just what you need. Bud, Miller, and Coors 12-pack cans, 2 for $20. And you can mix and match. Need that snack to go along with it? Doritos XXL chips, 2 for $6. Town Pump, right down the road.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up, oh yeah.
Hey there, Coulter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Tootell Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
You know, Coulter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have two-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
This Saturday evening at Paws Up, the Sealy Lake Drift Riders host their annual Snowball Banquet.
Hey everybody, this is Kurt from Kurt's Polaris. We have an event for the Sealy Lake Drift Riders called the Snowball. It is at the Paws Up Guest Ranch. We have numerous prizes that we're raffling off. We have bucket items, we have live auctions, we have silent auctions. We're giving away 2 snowmobiles you can buy raffle tickets for. We have some rifles. We have Levi LaValle's endorsements and signatures engraved into them. Matter of fact, I have Levi here with me.
I am Levi LaValle. I'm a 13-time Winter X Games medalist, world record holder for longest snowmobile jump. Kurt invited me out. It's a super cool event. Stop by, say hi. I'll be signing autographs and going to be there having a good time.
You can go to the SealyLakeDriftRiders.org, buy a ticket. It requires getting some dinner tickets if you're going to have dinner, or if you just want to come, it's a $20 ticket to get in. And when you get there to the event at the Paws Up Guest Ranch, your tickets will be sitting there waiting for you. It's going to be a great event.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. A pair of Montana's standout female athletes made news with their athletic futures Thursday. Columbia Falls outstanding javelin thrower Angelica Street committed to Texas A&M for her college future. The former Bozeman High star soccer player Avery Collins, she went to Stanford. Well, she is now graduated and now has been drafted in the first round of the National Women's Soccer League by the Washington Spirit.
Street, who owns the Montana Girls All-Class record in the javelin and is the reigning Gatorade Track Athlete of the Year for Montana, signed a national letter of intent with the Aggies last fall. Over the summer, Street went on to an elite throws camp at Texas A&M and made a strong impression. She hit several throws of over 160 feet, which is nearing the cutoff of the U.S. Olympic trials team. Street's best mark in competition came last year when she hurled a javelin 158 feet 8 inches. She has won 21 straight high school meets, including consecutive Class A championships.
Collins is a former Montana Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Montana. She was a 3-year starter at Stanford, where she helped the Cardinal soccer team to 3 straight Pac-12 championships and the 2017 title. She grad transferred to Washington State, started all 24 games last season, scoring 6 goals and doled out 5 assists. And again, she is Angelica Street, the daughter. Do I have this right?
No, Avery Collins.
Yeah, Avery Collins. Sorry, I turned around. Anyway, she's a very good athlete. She's pro now. There's a lot of ways to mess it up, you know, Coulter. I found all of them.
Avery Collins was a phenomenal athlete at Bozeman High.
Right.
Multiple state championships in soccer. She was on multiple state championship basketball teams. She's the sister of Grant Collins, who is a 4-year starter for Montana State, a linebacker. But their dad, Shane Collins, is Some would argue, a lot of people would argue, the greatest three-sport high school athlete in the history of the state of Montana. Shane Collins was recruited by every single school basically in the country to play football. I mean, he had 50-plus offers to play football. He was, by the time his senior year at Arizona State was over, he was the national champion in the shot put and had, I think, the 7th farthest throw in the world as a high school or as a college senior. And then was a second-round draft pick by the Washington Redskins. And, oh, by the way, he was also recruited by Montana State to play basketball. So he's one of the most highly recruited players in state history. He's one of only 2 men who have ever won Gatorade Player of the Year in 2 different sports in the same year. He was the Gatorade Player of the Year in football and track his senior year.
It's pretty impressive.
And obviously good stock because his daughter's going pro in soccer, and Grant Collins started, I think, 44 games at Montana State as a middle linebacker.
Yeah, pretty good. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. You can find us all over the World Wide Web, 1029ESPN.com. You can also find us on the social medias, at Gus Tootell, at Skyline Sports on Twitter, at 1029ESPN on Twitter and Instagram. You can also check out the YouTube channel, Rock and Roll with the YouTube. All right. Get all that out there. Coulter, it was a night off for Montana State in basketball last night, but it was a night on for the Big Sky Conference at large. We mentioned in the first hour, Eastern Washington, who's playing Montana State tomorrow, and Idaho, who's playing Montana tomorrow, played each other yesterday. Eastern Washington won that game in Cheney by 3 points, 78-75. Idaho, just a string of incredibly close
game was actually
losses.
In Moscow. Excuse me.
Oh, was it in Moscow?
Yep.
Okay. They signed it. They get it up a little differently here on the deal. So, okay, Idaho in Moscow, but another very close loss. Yes, you're in your headphone in the mic. That's what happens there. 78-75. Weber State, they beat Idaho State 76-68
to snap a 3-game conference losing streak. Weber State was 1-4 before that win.
And Idaho State, again, a team that has some really talented players that people don't know about because they've been transferred, but you know, it's Idaho State.
I mean, let's talk about this situation just for 1 second.
Okay.
Idaho State, Idaho, and Portland State all have between 8 and 10 new players on their roster. That's crazy. When we were sitting there at the Portland State game with Sal Nunu, the center, out, I looked at you, I said, dude, Portland State has no guys that I've ever seen play basketball before. They've never seen any of them play.
Right.
And that's crazy. And Idaho, they have a headliner in Trayvon Allen, certainly. But they have Scott Blakeney, who was in their top 8 a year ago, but they don't have anybody else either. And I'm pretty sure that Ryan Looney, Idaho State head coach, I think he brought in 12 or maybe even 13 new guys.
Right. Northern Colorado, they keep going strong. A 71-52 convincing victory over Southern Utah.
Sac State.
Yep.
You're on fire the last 3 minutes.
You know, I don't know, man. I'm already into my weekend. You know, so radio guys, we phone it in too, and also it's hard to read letters all jumbled up. Sacramento's a long word. Southern Utah also lost to Northern Arizona 75-72 in a quasi-rivalry game.
Well, I mean, they have a football trophy that they've played for more than 20 years, and they called the Battle of the Grand Canyon, so it's definitely a rivalry.
3-point game. I believe that game was in Cedar City. Northern Colorado was also at home in their 19-point victory over Sacramento State. And that win by Northern Colorado, not just that it was over Sacramento State, but it sort of the definitiveness with which they won is the biggest win of the night. Kind of puts Northern Colorado into, I think, that spot of number 2 in the Big Sky Conference, not just in terms of they're there as a matter of fact as it comes to the standings.
Right, but they also have the only win over Montana.
Right, but that's right.
I mean, if I was to do power rankings right now, I'd say Northern Colorado is number 1 because they have a win head-to-head over Montana. They have one less victory in the win column, but that's because they've played one less game.
Yeah, but they also have a loss that Montana doesn't have to Portland State.
Right.
So, I mean, you're right. I mean, if you're talking about head-to-head or whatever. Anyway, point being, 1-2, however you want to do it, right now, Northern Colorado is the other best team in the Big Sky Conference, along with Montana. Again, very early, 5 or 6 games into this thing. But as we try and, for all the teams that are jumbled in there, the 2 teams that are not are the Grizzlies and the Bears. That's it.
Certainly, and I think we talked about the impact of Montana State's game for Montana State against Eastern Washington.
Yeah.
It's a huge game for Eastern Washington, too, because one of the biggest factors in league play in college hoops is handling high expectations. If you're the team that's expected to win the league, then a lot of times everybody's going to give you their best shot, especially in a league like this where the travel is so hard. So in other words, if you're playing Eastern Washington, especially on the front end of a road trip, you're playing in Cheney on a Thursday, and then you have another game on Saturday, you're going to load up and try to beat that favorite team. Montana experienced this for the duration of the last 2 seasons. It'll be interesting to see if it shifts back to that as well. Travis DeCuire has been begging for it. He said, we want the bullseye. We want people to be nervous. We want people to be scared of us.
Right.
I don't think people are scared of the Grizz yet. That might be coming, but Eastern Washington, you don't necessarily want the intangible dynamic of what's going to happen here is so interesting because Weber State has so much tradition and they have never really been bad under Randy Ray, but they are trending that way. Jarek Harding returned fully last night and he scored 28 points. That's huge. He's absolutely their best player and one of the best players in the league. But whenever you have the weight of tradition weighing on you and then you start to slip, Weber State, they can't really afford a rebuild because they've had so many winning seasons in a row. So you got to figure out a way to get it back on track. I mean, they're 6-11 overall. That's unheard of for Weber State. So that pressure starts to build. Eastern Washington, the favorite for the first time in a couple years after having lost in the title game 2 years in a row, and a lot of those guys are back. That's a lot of pressure. You're going to have the target on your back.
Yeah.
But then you have the two teams in Montana who has a distinct dynamic of they lost one of the greatest classes in senior classes in school history and one of the better classes in the history of the league just in terms of total wins. So I think people expected them to be down, and they're not. That, to me, is an advantage more than pressure, like Eastern Washington and Weber State are going through.
Totally.
And then Northern Colorado, they have the distinct factor of no one really identifying them as any sort of contender because they lost Jordan Davis, but they absolutely are.
Right.
And so they have, and in terms of like the guy who's the leader, who has the chip on his shoulder, Jonah Radabaugh's had a chip on his shoulder since the day he walked in the league. I mean, look at his haircut. He's trying to make people notice him. The guy, but he's such a fearless competitor. I mean, that's the guy where more than any other guy in the league, I think that there's a bunch of guys that can take over the game with their offense. Like Harold Frey can go hit 7 threes in a row. Jarek Harding can do his crazy Energizer Bunny thing where he's throwing the ball behind his head and, Goran Dragic style bank shots off the glass and stuff. And Cy Pridgett can certainly take over a game too, but Jonah Radabaugh can take your will. He can take the will of the other team's best player every night, and that gives you such a huge advantage compared to almost everybody else in the league. So to me, Northern Colorado is the dark horse, even though, like you said, they're only a game back on Montana in the standings, and they had another big win last night. I mean, beating Sacramento State by 19, that in itself is impressive because of the possession count. I mean, Sac State has one of the slowest paces of play, and they're one of the best defensive teams in terms of scoring defense in the country.
So how do you get out there and score 70 points?
And but it's also just so hard to beat them by 19.
Yeah, right.
Even when you just whip them, you beat them by 10 because of the way that the possessions go.
Yeah, a 19-point win is really like a 30-point win or something compared, if you stretched it out over the number of possessions you would have over another team that ran at a different pace, no doubt. Well, tomorrow, back in action in Missoula for the men and in Bozeman for the men as well for Montana and Montana State, Idaho and Eastern Washington coming to town respectively. The women on the road against those two teams as well, and happy to have Big Sky Conference basketball back on in the state of Montana tomorrow. Quick break, come back. The most important thing that was said on the show this week, you'll hear what it was, and also, I don't talk too much about Titans Chiefs, Coulter. Can the Tennessee Titans actually do this thing? I got a word for you. Yes, they can.
Hi there. It's Les Schwab Tires. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes and shocks and wheels and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer all that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at night because all those services affect things like steering and stopping. That's why we offer more than tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the advocates can help. Let us guide you through the process and take on the hassles for you so you can just focus on getting better.
If you've been injured in an accident, give the Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. The Advocates are on your side.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
The holidays passed, sick of the snow, looking forward to the weekend and a tube of cookie dough? You got the wintertime blues now, baby. It's the wintertime blues.
Wait, the wintertime blues? Have you not been to the Desperado?
Desperado?
Yeah, nightly hockey and basketball, all the NFL playoffs, the best hot wings in Missoula, plus thick, juicy burgers and beer to go around. The Despo is an oasis of happy any time of the year.
Honey, get out of that rocking chair. The sun is shining at the Despo.
Hey guys, Ryan Tootell and Colton Nuanez from Tootell and Nuanez. Hey, we're not just here for your entertainment, we're also a bastion of knowledge and information as well.
If you want to know what's going on in the world of youth sports, from sign-ups to camps and other activities, tune into Tootell and Nuanez on Tuesday.
That's right, interviews and information with people who know to make sure that your kids get all the best in sports that Missoula has to offer this Tuesday on Tootell and Nuanez.
The youth sports segment is brought to you by Pepsi Cola of Missoula, proudly supporting youth athletics in the Garden City. Hey guys, you ever heard of Magic Johnson?
Rings a bell.
One of the greatest basketball superstars of all time played for a man named Judd Heathcote at Michigan State. And guess what? Judd Heathcote started his career at the University of Montana.
Coulter, did you know that 2 former University of Montana head coaches have been head coaches in the NBA and 1 on Team USA?
Isn't that amazing?
And that's why we've created Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree podcast. Get it wherever you get your podcast. Just search Grizz Greats.
It's a phenomenal and historic podcast series proudly presented by Blackfoot Communications and Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate.
Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Good evening, my friends. Happy Friday to you. Happy weekend. It's all out there in front of you. What are you going to do with it? Go play in the snow? Go play in the sun? Go play anywhere. Run around. Have an enjoyable time. It's Tootell Nuanez, 1029 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Hey, if you miss anything in the show, check it out on the podcast. Podcast available wherever you get your podcast, iTunes or whatever, Apple Podcast. Okay, get my language right. Spotify, Stitcher, whatever. Go find it. Tootell Nuanez. Rate it, review it, listen to it, and enjoy it. It's available thanks to Wingate by Wyndham Hotel and Blackfoot Communications. Also, Grizz Greats podcast, episode 1 out now. Episode 1 bonus episode out shortly. So we'll have that out with Eric Hayes and Ben Demers, 2 players who played in the 70s for the Montana Grizzlies, played for Judd Heathcote and Jim Brandenburg. Jim Brandenburg, the focus of the first episode. So enjoy those. We've been really enjoying doing it for you. So go have some fun with that. Coulter, we spent a lot of time on Green Bay, San Francisco. I think that most folks are in this area are kind of keyed in more on that game than the other. That said, there's plenty of Chiefs fans in the state of Montana, and we even know a couple of Titans fans, too, wandering around the streets of this state. The Tennessee Titans are, of course, the surprise of this Final Four grouping, and yet they're not such a surprise to people who really followed the team closely. I mean, from the point that Ryan Tannehill took over, this team has been one of the absolute best teams. We talked about, Colton, the fact that statistically their defense is not outstanding. It's been, 25th even in the league in terms of the regular season. But I also think if you consider the 8-ball that they were put behind, so to speak, by their offense, frankly, while Marcus Mariota was the quarterback, they were put in some really bad spots. But from the point that Vrabel kind of changed quarterbacks and started to run the way that he wanted to, literally with the best running back in the game in terms of yardage, you end up with a team that is really two different teams. I mean, this is how transformative a quarterback can be who's doing it the way you kind of want it done. And the fact that Ryan Tannehill is the guy, I think some people are still not really believers about the Tennessee Titans. I am a believer. That said, I'm also a believer in the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, are you dag-nab kidding me with the divisional round game and just what they are in general, Patrick Mahomes and that team? So, look, I'm not going to sit here again. I'm not going against convention or trying to go out on a limb. I'm not even trying to make a devil's advocate type argument. Kansas City, I got winning this football game. But Tennessee is legitimately, whatever you think Tennessee is, they're better than that. Everybody listen, whatever you think, however good you think Tennessee is, they're better than that. I just don't think they're as good as Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, they have two of the best players in the league, in my opinion. I mean, guys that have been voted on the top 100 NFL top 100 list multiple years in a row. Taylor Lewan, their left tackle, and Jarrell Casey, their inside, their 3-tech, their defensive tackle. Those guys are not household names, and they're outstanding players. That's a start. I also think that Tannehill, there's a lot of guys that get that early hype in their careers and then they fizzle, and it never really surprises me. And a lot of times the hype is just kind of overblown, and Mitch Trubisky's kind of one of those guys. Tannehill is one of the only ones of those guys that I always liked. I always thought Tannehill was really good when he's healthy. He's just never been able to really stay healthy, and he was also in a horrific situation in Miami.
The best thing I can say for me about Ryan Tannehill is that, to me, Ryan Tannehill has actually improved each and every year and season that I've seen him go. And not even just statistically, but just in watching him play, that he can go and get it done. I like Ryan Tannehill. I don't love Ryan Tannehill. That said, what he is doing with this team, I mean, it's the perfect fit, and he's clearly, a huge step up from Marcus Mariota.
And I guess that's the thing, is that I'm not surprised by that at all. Yeah, I get Marcus Mariota's a nice guy. I've never thought Marcus Mariota was that good. Even when he won the Heisman Trophy, I thought he was a good operator of a system, but that's all he's ever really done.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's shown what he is, and that is okay, but certainly not number 2 overall, by no means a franchise guy, and at his worst, actually, not helpful to your football team winning. So, Colter, this game, Kansas City is going off on Sunday. I mean, the atmosphere already at Arrowhead for the divisional round was crazy, and then when they had that comeback, that it's going to be going on. Now, I don't know when the last time there has been an AFC Championship game in Arrowhead, if ever. It has to have been one, right? We can look this up and find out. But it's, this might be the last game ever at Arrowhead, because when they're all said and done, there may be nothing left standing in Kansas City for this Chiefs game, and I think that's a big deal as well. I love watching the Chiefs play. I don't know any football fan, rooting interest aside, who doesn't think it's just glorious to watch what they do offensively and the way they do it. I would love to see Kansas City in the Super Bowl.
I didn't love it last week.
I think it would be absolutely a blast, right? David hated it last week because his Texas, we know what happened there. Anyway, so we'll see. So I do have Kansas City winning this game, but I think this game, look, it could be a blowout, but I think it's more likely that this is actually going to be a competitive game and a one-score game also, especially the way Tennessee likes to sit on the football, suck the game out. Colter.
Didn't the Chiefs host the AFC Championship game last year?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure New England
last year
was Kansas City.
Was it in the KC?
I believe that was the first AFC Championship game in Arrowhead, so you got back-to-back.
Oh, that's pretty good to go back-to-back with it. Hey, before the show's over, here's the most important thing that was said this week. Coulter Giannicara, do I have this right, had 2 points for Big Sky. The question accompanying this stat, how many points did you score, Coulter, for the Big Sky Screaming Eagles back in the day? Were you filling it up?
That's a hilarious question because I don't know if this is sad, impressive, both. I scored 27 varsity points in my career. I suited up for probably close to 45 varsity games. I started in, I think, 17 games my senior year. I was not good at basketball. There's no question. I made the basketball team. I was playing varsity early because of one reason alone. Because Brandon Bostic, who went on to play tight end at Montana State, who was a borderline NFL prospect before he blew his knee. I hope Bostic's listening. He's 6'5", 250, and they needed somebody that could guard him in practice. So they're like, okay, well, you're going to be like the 11th guy on the varsity. You're going to sit the bench. And then my senior year, we were awful. We only won 4 games. And I remember I scored 7 points against Helena Capital in one of our only breakthrough wins.
The highlight of the Nuanez high school basketball career.
We were getting killed, but we were losing by probably 30 to Sentinel my senior year, and I hit a 3 in the corner at the end because everybody's like, shoot it. And I was like, whatever, no one's guarding me, hit it, whatever. But no, I scored 14 of my 27 points at the free throw line. I was our technical free throw shooter. It's great. That's my claim to fame. I went 14 of 14 from the free throw line.
Is that real?
My senior year of high school, 14 of 14.
Wow.
That's all I got.
Kendall Manwell, take a lesson.
27 points in 20 games, so you could say I was about a 1.2 points per game score. But as former Big Sky high school coach Aaron Arledge would tell you, I set the best screen in school history.
Coulter.
So humiliating.
You had your best game ever against Helena Capital. We spoke with Eric Hayes today. He had his best game ever against UCLA in the tournament.
Comparable.
Very comparable.
Matt Miller's older brother, Drew Miller, was the best player on that Helena Capital team. He's a great basketball player.
Is that right?
He should have gone played somewhere. I don't know why he didn't. Hopefully he's listening. I know he listens from Bozeman. He loves our show.
Well, get in line.
I'm glad to. I mean, I shouldn't have said any of that because all I did was set myself up for ridicule.
No,
I was at the gym. I was at the Adams Center, and a couple of the Montana administrators were like, never missed a free throw in high school, huh? It's like, here we go.
Well, we're just going to play this at the end of every show that we ever do.
No, we should never play that again.
Have a blast this weekend. Enjoy basketball on Saturday, football on Sunday. Enjoy us on Monday. We'll see you then.
Gonna get my baby one time. Yeah. It's just a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Hey guys, it's Ryan and Coulter from Tootell and Nuanez here to tell you about our brand new project that we are so excited to release, Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree, the podcast series with all of the living coaches